It gives me pleasure to be here with you today as a guest for the maiden edition of this home ownership series. And I want to say that I appreciate this opportunity to be part of it. I wish to take this opportunity to commend Glitz Africa Living magazine and First National Bank, organizers of this series, for creating this platform for industry players within the real estate sector to meet and deliberate on issues pertaining to home ownership. We at the Ministry of Works and Housing welcome the initiative of this kind, as it serves as a way of learning and exchanging ideas in our collective quest to move the sector forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the importance of our homes to us as individuals cannot be overemphasized. To many, our homes mean much more to us than just shelter. It is the center of the most important relationship that evolves in our lives, and is the place where we raise our families, receive our friends, and our neighbors. Indeed, homes, for that matter, housing in general, is fundamental to the health and well-being of people and the smooth running of countries. This explains why it is fully entrenched in the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. Thus, having a home is a basic right, which allows us to live a happy and fulfilling life. Obviously, the key determinants of quality of life within societies of every country depends largely on a sound and efficient market that provides decent homes for its people. Notwithstanding these attributes, the growing housing market that is expected to supply these homes for Ghanaians is saddled with a lot of challenges that eventually make home ownership very complex and also an expensive venture for most of our citizens. The causes of these complexities, Mr. Chairman, are not far-fetched and can be attributed to our unpreparedness over the last few decades to meet the challenges that urbanization and population growth present to us. Currently, it is estimated that 60% of Ghanaians will need some form of government assistance to support them to get access to housing, while 35% were not able to access housing even with government support in the form of subsidies. Unfortunately, this is a situation in which we find ourselves as a country. Interventions in the past have been piecemeal, resulting in the country struggling with the housing deficit, currently in excess of 2 million housing units. Ladies and gentlemen, to address this precarious situation, there is the need for a concerted government policy direction that focuses on bridging current institutional gap to provide mass subsidized housing targeted at the 60% population in the short to medium term, and the remaining 35% in the long term as our economic situation improves. The government recognizes this huge challenge and have pledged to critically look at the general institutional architecture that drives the housing sector. For this reason, the MPP government plans to set up a national housing authority to lead the supply side of the housing market. The National Housing Authority will not only serve as a regulator in the sector, but will also plan, develop, and manage housing development in Ghana, especially affordable housing. The expectation is that the operations of the National Housing Authority will help complement the activities of the newly created National Housing and Mortgage Fund, which is to stimulate the demand side of the housing market to make housing accessible to low to middle income earners. Ultimately, the objective of setting up the National Housing Authority is to decouple the planning, development, management of housing projects of the ministry from its core mandate of formulating, coordinating, and monitoring the implementation of policies. Certainly, this will streamline the transition from policy formulation, coordination, and monitoring through the successful implementation of government-led housing program. In recent times, most implemented government-led housing projects have not achieved the desired outcomes and impact for which they were conceived, primarily because the feasibilities, conception, planning, development, and management of these projects are not handled by professionals, but rather influenced by political considerations. Sadly, government-led housing suffered during the implementation stage, causing them to stall or abandon when there is a change in government. As the new sector minister, I have resolved to lead the process to engage key stakeholders within the housing sector to set up the National Housing Authority and to find ingenious ways of creating the enabling environment, especially for the private sector to thrive in the industry. This is an undeniable fact, or it is an undeniable fact, that apart from the cultural values that influence the preferred housing options in the past, home ownership has been a great source of security for most Ghanaians, and has led many to prefer home ownership where they can obtain titles to their properties. Over time, this has culminated into lateral development, which has been assessed to be unsustainable in the quest to ensure optimum use of land space. Consequently, there is increasing demand for development of high-rise properties towards maximizing limited land space, and this has called for the need to consider its implication for shared ownership of common areas. Therefore, there is the need for a condominium bill that we are working on to regulate shared and communal spaces. The ministry is committed to getting a legislation on condominium properties in place that will seek to provide for the establishment, ownership, and management of condominiums and unit titles, among other things. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from the formulation of legislation and policies to streamline the activities of the sector, the government believes in dialogue with industry players to ensure a high level of professionalism, transparency, and results-oriented programs. In this regard, the ministry is confident that lessons learned through this engagement will offer us ideas needed to provide homes with the ultimate aim of helping to reduce the housing deficit which is currently facing the country. Before I take my seat, I would like to thank you, Glitz Africa Living Magazine, and First National Bank once again for staying committed to this noble cause of helping to provide homes for our people. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor to declare this maiden edition of Home Ownership Series duly open. And I wish you all a very fruitful interaction. And I also have a duty of also launching the first edition of the Glitz Africa Living magazine on home ownership, duly launched. Thank you. Thank you.